If there's one area where After Effects falls short, it's 3D compositing. After Effects is a 2D compositor, so it primarily works in 2D space. However, there is an option to work with 2D layers in a 3D space, so you're not technically working with actual three-dimensional objects, you're just generating the illusion of 3D. With that being said, in this tutorial, I'm going to break down the core basics of animating 2D layers in that 3D space. Now, if you're a Storyblocks customer, this skill is really valuable since there's a few templates in our library that may utilize 3D space. Now, all of our templates have basic properties that are simple to customize and anyone can use, but for After Effects templates specifically, they're usually just project files, which means that if the template utilizes 3D space, you'll be suited to make more advanced adjustments if you're familiar with how 3D space works in After Effects. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. To access the 3D properties of a shape layer or text, you first need to enable the 3D switch. To do this, press the 3D cube icon within the layer stack. So this will give you access to new transform properties for X, Y, and Z values across position, rotation, angle, anchor point, and scale. The primary axis to focus on here is the Z-axis, which is the depth axis. So you'll usually find this as the third value in the position settings. The Z-axis controls how close or far a layer sits in relation to the camera. Each 3D layer will also have orientation controls for X, Y, and Z. So pressing R reveals rotation properties. Unlike 2D rotation, which revolves around an anchor point, you're now rotating around a spherical 3D axis. So to see this in action, let's build a cube to illustrate how After Effects handles 3D layers. So go ahead and start with a square shaped layer and then set its size and fill color and duplicate it 5 times. So you'll now have 6 layers in total. From there, go ahead and pause the video to rename each layer to what you see on screen and follow the transform instructions for each layer. Once that's done, you might not look like anything has changed, but let's jump back in and make some adjustments. So to see how your layers interact in 3D space, you'll need to switch views. So you can change your active camera to top, back, or right, but a better option is to switch to custom view 1, which gives you an angled perspective. Alternatively, you can use the orbit around cursor tool in the top left to rotate around the scene. Just remember to return to your original viewpoint if you get disoriented. So now to control the cube as a single object, you need to parent the layers together. So you can create a new null object, enable 3D on it, and parent all 6 cube layers to this null. That way, when you move or rotate the null object, the entire cube moves as one. So far we've covered creating a 3D object and adjusting the viewing angle, but how do you animate the cube within a proper 3D environment? That's where cameras come in. So let's go ahead and jump in. Here I've loaded a composition I created earlier that features multiple 3D layers, objects, and text. The goal is to demonstrate the perception and depth between these elements here. So parenting everything together to a null only gives you limited control. So to truly mimic the experience of photographing objects in space, you'll need a 3D camera. So go ahead and go to Layer, New, Camera, and in most cases the default settings are fine, so just press OK. And it's common here to create a second null object. You can name it something like camera controls and make it 3D. Then parent the camera to this null for easier control of the rotation and movement of the camera specifically. So make sure your viewing panel is set to active camera. Once that's done, open up the position and rotation settings of the camera control null, and you can start animating movement through the sequence. Even though everything here is 2D, the parallax between these objects creates the illusion of 3D depth. To add a bit more dimension to the scene, you can also introduce lighting. So go up to Layer, New, Light, choose Spotlight, and enable Cast Shadows. Then position the light so it interacts with the scene in a believable way. You also may have noticed throughout this tutorial that enabling 3D on a layer adds visible access handles in the composition viewer, red, green, and blue for X, Y, and Z. These let you manually adjust position, rotation, and depth without having to dive into the transform properties. And that's the basics of animating 2D layers within 3D space using After Effects. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and head over to storyblocks.com to get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price.